I just spoke with David Lyon, and he is an embodied creator. And we spoke about what is significant for women to know about highly sensitive men, embracing your not only your feminine energy, but also your masculine energy. And his message for our sensitive male youth. So David is a deep somatic coach, entrepreneur, and embodied creator. As a men's mentor and group facilitator, he has worked with hundreds of men all over the globe. David runs a men's project called Evolving Men, which connects men to their bodies, a deep sense of purpose, and a community of dedicated brothers. Besides that, he supports individuals to express themselves authentically online, develop an audience, and earn a living doing what they love most. So, in short, becoming embodied creators. Here is David.
Yeah. Usually when I start recording, I make a weird funny face. Like.
Yeah. That helps.
Yes.
It does. Oh, wonderful. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen. Look at this. How beautiful. What did this sensitive boy already had within him?
So much enthusiasm for life, a deep hunger to learn. Yeah, a lot of awe for the things he was learning. You know, like this kind of every day is a freaking miracle. Yeah.
Yeah. I still have that, by the way.
Yeah, me too. That's why sometimes I feel like, it's like, but I think many sensitive people can relate to that. Like at the same time feeling like really old, but also really young.
Yeah.
And so that part definitely I very much still have. It's like, like my worldview being shaken so regularly, like new insights coming in. And yeah, I think if you learn to handle it, it's an amazing gift to stay so open to what comes in, as opposed to like at some point becoming rigid and being like, well, that's how life is. And anything that doesn't fit that image is like, I just pretend it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was true about this little David?
What was true? That he was really talented in many different ways. He loved sports and movement to death. And he didn't really have someone who really could relate to sensitivity. Yeah. So that was challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How old were you there in this picture?
Probably like 3 and something, because it says 97 on the side. So like 3 and a few months.
Okay. What feeling do you get when you look at this picture?
I'm actually happy to see my mom smile. I was happy to, so I just asked my family, like, hey, I need a picture, 4 to 8, me looking at the, and they sent me like 20 different images. And so that was really touching. I think what I like about this one is I look really calm. And yeah, there's something that draws me to my eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like kind of a depth or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like many highly sensitive children and adults. Yeah, a deep look. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So, as a highly sensitive man, and it's great because you've worked with so many men, and let's see here. From all around the world, so that's wonderful. And of course, you hear many negative associations about being a man. Can you give us a few practical examples of what men share with you?
I mean, what I experience and what I know, yeah, I don't think I know a man who doesn't experience that. It's just a huge split inside of themselves between the side that is more like that more fits into what we maybe traditionally associate with being a man. So this kind of like, like confident and out there and doing stuff and like very in your face and assertive and you can take it the like positive side of that, of like, having a clear direction and believing in yourself and being able to stand up for yourself. And then maybe the shadow aspect of it is like being inconsiderate of others and like overpowering others. So using this charge that is there, and this like also this like primal energy that is just like, this wildness, and using that in a way where it overpowers others and it overwhelms others. And then the other side is like maybe what we connect more to being highly sensitive is like being incredibly receptive and feeling a lot of what is going on around us and inside of us. And I mean, just all these different motions, all these conflicting things happening at the same time. And so I think the greatest challenge that men have is that at some point, every man to some degree decides, what kind of man am I? And there is very rarely this kind of, well, I'm both. I'm not a complete man if I'm just one of these two. Yeah. And maybe just to name one aspect that is very present, regardless of what you choose, is a deep sense of shame. That so often is so like the water the men are swimming in, that it really takes a lot of work to even realize how ashamed they are. And then you're flooded with shame, seeing how ashamed you are. So it's quite a thing to get out of it and to even talk about it. Yeah.
Can you give an example of shame?
Well, there are many stories associated to it. They can be like, I'm a worthless piece of shit. If people realized who I really am, they wouldn't love me. I don't deserve to be happy. But there's like, that's the thought, but then there's something underlying that, which is like the emotional, physical experience, like the contraction that happens, and in a way it's a trauma. And the work is not just to like look at the thought and be like, oh, that thought is not true, but it's like, okay, can you allow yourself to complete the experience of shame, right? Like to give it space so that it doesn't stay stuck, and then you're no longer a victim of it. Yeah.
And actually celebrate.
Yeah. And realize, like, first of all, I mean, shame it's so universal, and it's such a taboo that by you going through it, you're going to develop so much wisdom and understanding for other people that you're going to become like a magnet for, others asking for support and people just wanting to be in your presence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is that where the interest in feminine and masculine energy grew into what you're doing now at the moment, working as an embodied creator and helping people with their online business and and embracing their also their feminine energy?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say that the men I'm working with, since they are more coming from the highly sensitive side, they have more of a challenge with their masculine. And of course, like it's heavily intertwined, and if you're not connected to one, you're kind of not really connected to the other. But yeah, I mean, I started this whole working with men because I realized how negative my associations were towards anything that I considered masculine and other men. And so I was like, that seems weird. And I started talking to other men, and they had similar feelings about it. And so I was like, whoa, how could the individual experience for a man change, but also how could we collectively change if we don't see either masculine or feminine as bad or good, but just starting to see how like how they together make up life, and how understanding more deeply how they're connected and when to express what, like that brings freedom. Like when I know in my, for example, like in my work with other people, when I know when to be really vulnerable and express something that is going on for me, but also understanding when it's actually more about holding space for the other person, and having a sense that like if I were to bring in my vulnerability right now, it would get really shaky. So it's like you start developing a deeper understanding of, okay, like I can do this and I also can do that. And so that's always where you start. Like you start understanding that you can move along the spectrum of masculine and feminine. You can fully go into your emotions and cry and scream and sob and lie in people's like legs, and just cry whatever it is. And you can also be really focused and be really oriented to creating something, and not being so much connected to your emotions, or at least not expressing them so much, and learning more to like hold space for them. And then once you see that, oh, all of this is possible, life becomes kind of like a, like you try to tune into the situation and be like, okay, what is most life-serving right now? What do I need to express right now of all these different qualities that I have to make life flow, or to create whatever it is that I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I also really like that in a prior conversation you mentioned that in the past you felt disconnected in groups, and then you made a shift into exploring why and sharing that with the other people in the group.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because I always say to my clients, please verify, because very easily we can make up a story in our mind that it's probably this or that. And so I was wondering if you think that exploring part is also a way to embrace your feminine energy when you're a man in business, in leading teams, for example.
Absolutely, and that's a big and. In my experience, it makes a big difference where you explore, because when you explore with people like where there might not be a shared commitment to expressing their truth, or who might just not be so connected to themselves, you might say like, hey, this is what is going on for me, this is the story that I'm telling myself, and I'm feeling kind of unsure about this. They might just block it off and find it weird, or they might like say, oh no, nothing is going on for me, but like your antenna still sense something. So then it gets really confusing. So that's why actually a big part of like my men's project, Evolving Men, is to bring together groups of men, and then have exactly this happen. Like someone shares and they're really being received, and then they might even get feedback of like, how do I experience you when you share this? And what that does is like it validates the inner experience. And over time you get to this place of like, oh, I can, even if your like perception is not always right, like of course sometimes it's flawed, like sometimes it's just something coming up from the past, but I can still like acknowledge it. It's still this like first like, yes, my experience is valid, And without that, I think you cannot function in places where you don't have the sensitivity, because you immediately start doubting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if I go back to like as a child, I need the validation to understand that it's okay to be angry. If I never get the validation from my parents or caretakers, hey, you're angry right now and that's okay, I will not show my anger anymore. I will not go there anymore because it feels scary. So if that does not happen, and most of us have some wounds around that, we need spaces where this is being validated. And the more that this happens, it's like something grows inside of me where I can hold it myself, where I'm like my own parent. And then I can start going into spaces that are not as supportive and safe, because I know, well, I have these spaces, I have these people in my life that support me. So here I can I can focus on what matters most in this particular context and understand, okay, maybe here I cannot express myself so vulnerably, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautifully said. Yeah. And what is significant for women to know about a highly sensitive man?
I think probably one, I mean, there's a lot to say, but I think the piece I'll focus on, because I imagine it's not going to be addressed, probably not going to be addressed by other men, is for women to understand that men need other men to develop. So as much as, you know, healing can occur between men and women, and like I'm a lot into that with my partner, and we also do, like, offer stuff together for men and women to come together, and it's beautiful and it's powerful. But there's something that's been lost for men in the last few generations, at least, of being initiated into manhood by other men. So again, like if I go to childhood, first as a boy, I'm connected to my mother. And then at some point, what actually should happen and what used to happen is, like, at some point, the father or the other men from the community take the boy with them and show them like what they do and take them away from the mother. And that's the initiation into adulthood and into manhood. And so I think that's important for women to understand, is like you will never be able to give to the however much you want to support him, you will never be able to give certain aspects to him, and that's completely fine.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. It's great, because I do think that not everybody addresses this. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, especially when a woman who herself is somewhat sensitive notices the sensitivity in a man, there will be like this big impulse to protect him, which is good and is beautiful. But it's like at some point you need to release that.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's, I mean, for a mother, that's probably the most challenging thing she can do. It's like to let the child, let the boy go, let him free. And so most men are still tied to their mother.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. What is can you give us an example of masking your sensitive power in the past?
Yeah, I think what many do, and what I still do at times, and what I probably did a lot more, is to go a lot up in my head. And I think many sensitive people are very intelligent, and their minds can be very quick. And so for me, what I would do is like make a lot of jokes, be very witty, sarcastic, and so to use my power in that way of like using humor to assert like my strength and like outsmart others. I'd probably open up and be like, oh, I'm noticing that right now I have this impulse to do this, and I'm curious like what's actually going on inside of me, and like get her support to look inside and be like, oh, what is actually going on? Because in the end, most of our communication is driven to create connection, just that some of the patterns that we learn don't actually create connection. So when I'm with someone where I know I can open up, I will do that. When I'm somewhere else, I will, for myself, like check in with my body and be like, oh, what's actually going on inside of myself? And so I'll probably notice some discomfort, some pain, some numbness, and start breathing into that and give that compassion. Be like, yeah, I totally understand that from this place, you want to lash out, like you want to show that you're powerful in this way, but also understanding that's not going to actually like make things better for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great journey, right? Yeah. Yeah. So what does your heart wants to share with our sensitive male youth?
What comes up is something like, oh, you're fucking awesome, and maybe no one has told you that before, and maybe you have not been given the affirmation that you need to see how gifted you are, and that's okay too. Like that can be part of a path as well, to be wounded and then to heal that wound. Yeah, find people, find places, find communities where you feel supported, where you feel seen. You'll see how you'll start flourishing. Probably the equivalent to having an affirmation is going to a space inside of my body that feels really good and spacious, right? Because that's what an affirmation is meant to do. It's meant to like lift me up and be like, oh yeah, that's who I am. And so for me, it's more direct if I connect to the physical sensation immediately. And often that's my heart space. It's like, oh man, there's like this tenderness and this warmth and this expansiveness.
Being in total awe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in childhood picture. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, David.
Thank you.
I am a highly sensitive man.